Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today I'm presenting to you a model that is a little bit different from what we normally build, at least stylistically. This is the highly accurate Master Chief helmet from Halo by the builder Peter Carmichael, aka Pacific Brick. The Master Chief is a character that hardly needs much of an intro, easily one of the most iconic protagonists from the video game world in like the last 20 years. This is a super soldier of few words who blasts his way through alien armies time and time again in a series of wonderfully constructed worlds. Shout out, by the way, to anybody who remembers Jeep jousting from the first Halo. Now, deep cuts aside, in this video, I'm going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into this custom build, showing you some of the closer details and talking about the unique techniques used to make such an excellent looking model. But before we get into all of that, first, let me say that if you wanted to build this helmet for yourself, the instructions can be found at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. Included with each purchase are the PDF step-by-step building instructions and a digital parts list file that can be easily uploaded online for getting all the pieces you'll need to build this creation. Any and all support is always greatly appreciated. It helps us do what we do here at the channel, and buying instructions also help support the talented builders we work with like Peter. Now, all right, let's knock the measurements out of the way really quick. It is 5.5 inches long, 14 centimeters, nearly 5 inches wide at 12 centimeters, and 5.5 inches high, or just over 4 inches high if you wanted to take it off of the display stand. That's almost exactly half the size of how big this helmet would be in real life, and it basically means that this model is very easy to palm and to do Hamlet reenactments. But I'll get into the handling a little later. Let's address what I think some of you may have been asking yourselves already, which is about the color. Ideally, or classically, the Master Chief helmet would be done in olive green, but if you have ever tried building with this as your primary color, it becomes apparent that there aren't as many parts available in this shade of green, and quickly you start to run out of building options. Then it becomes a calculation from the builder, in this case Peter, what details to sacrifice in order to just get the color you want, and at the end of the day, Spartan armor can be all kinds of colors, and Peter favored his design and focused on intricate techniques, which I'm hoping to show you in this video was a far better choice. Now, for this model, we can't talk about technique without immediately laser focusing on the visor. He did a thing that I don't think was inherently obvious to try, and it ended up working out incredibly well for the model. The visor here is a series of 7 different sub-assemblies, all jointed on a slightly different angle and all plated with metallic gold tiles. Probably a much better color to use here than anything transparent. Many of those gold tiles are 2x2 cut corner pieces. When they interlock between the different angular sections, it helps to make this area feel a little bit more naturally rounded, and the lines between the tiles here help mimic some of the details on the visor when you look closer at some of these images. It's easily the most complex part of the model, with the angles and spaces meticulously measured by the designer, and frankly it really makes the whole look of this piece work extremely well from a distance. Now, rising just above the visor, there's a nice little technique of stacking a lot of panel pieces on top of each other. So it gives you that little stair effect right in the center. And then on either side of that, you have these 2 angular points that stick out. They're pretty large sub-assembly builds that you pin into the side of either piece of the helmet, and they're pointed upward at a very slight angle, which I feel like is a technique that a lot of builders might not initially try, but it ultimately is more accurate, and it does keep the shapes of the helmet here a little bit smoother and more concise. At the very front by the chin, you can also see that that plating is on another hinge piece. It is leaning back ever so slightly, or tipping forward, depending on your perspective. And frankly, outside of that, it starts to become difficult to point out specific little details on this model. And that's because everything here is so small that one intricate connection point for an interesting piece blends in and melts into another interesting connection point right next to it. The back of the head also has tons of wonderful detailing. The panel pieces that imitate those vent-like shapes is probably my favorite bit here. And now it is worth doing the handling section of this video. I'm just going to do it one-handed as I move the camera around, but here's what the bottom of the helmet looks like. You can see pretty clearly where the stand would fit into. Now, holding a model one-handed is always usually the more difficult thing to try out, but you'll see here I can rotate the entire helmet with just one hand. I'm not paying attention to weak points. I'm not trying to avoid certain areas. The model here is pretty darn strong. And then you see where I turned it over. See how the front of the chin bent forward. There you go, just pushed it back into place. And that's probably the only weak part of the model that I can really think of. Now, placing the helmet on the ground, once again, there aren't things that I'm trying to avoid. The helmet sits there, no problem. And this is what the stand looks like. It's relatively smooth. All black doesn't really grab your eye, which is kind of the point. You want the viewer's attention to be focused entirely on the Master Chief helmet. And then in terms of mobility, it's very easy to rotate the head around on the stand. When I push it around, you can see also that there's just a tiny bit of wobble, but an extreme amount of stability. So there it is. Just wanted to show you guys how this helmet handles in case you were moving it around. And basically with that, we are done talking about the greater details of this Master Chief helmet. During construction, I could really tell that Peter, the designer, had spent a long time troubleshooting, designing, refining every little detail of the model. It's an extremely efficient build on the outside and the inside. And of course, feel free to leave a like or a comment if you want to see a full-size Master Chief body attached to this helmet. Now, any and all suggestions are always welcome in the comments below. We like to know what you guys want to see coming down the line for the future. Remember, if you did want to build this model for yourself, the instructions can be found at our web store, www.brickvault.toys, linked in the description below. If you enjoy our content, you can always like, subscribe, share the video, do whatever you want to do. Thank you so much for hanging out to the very end, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.